A deadly haze of pollution has gripped large parts of northern India over the last week or so. In the last few days, it has been the worst levels of pollution recorded in over 3 years. Now, the top court, the Supreme Court, has also stepped in and given a slew of directions before the next hearing on 6th November. This includes holding local administrations responsible if farmers in neighboring states burn stubble of their crops, which is believed to be one of the leading causes of this haze and pollution in Delhi, NCR and other parts of northern India. It's 7 states actually which get impacted every year, and this time has been the worst. Usually the whole narrative around pollution becomes pollution in the capital, becomes the question of whether odd even actually works or doesn't work, and whether it makes any sense. Is it the central government's fault for not getting Punjab and Haryana together and finding a solution to stubble burning, or is it the Delhi government's fault for not doing enough? We today on the India Development Debate want to go beyond all of this. We're going to talk to people who have actually studied this problem for over 15 years. We're going to talk to some people who have solutions and are thinking about ways to combat this. We're going to try and find out why exactly such large parts of our country get gripped by this deadly haze every year. Is it getting worse, and what can we do about it? Joining me in this conversation today are Dr. Sumit Sharma, Director of Earth Science and Climate Change at TERI. I'm speaking with Avik Saha, National Convener of Jai Kisan Andolan and also co-founder of Swaraj India, who's worked with farmers for several decades. Sukhmeet Singh, co-founder of A2P Energy Solutions, is joining us. He's created a system where the residue of crops, which is stubble, can be collected and turned to commercial use instead of being burnt. And I'm also speaking with Bharti Chaturvedi, founder and director of Chintan Environmental Research and Action Group. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for speaking with us today. Dr. Sumit, I'm going to start by sort of understanding from you, very simply, very layman. Now, stubble burning has been taking place for decades. We've had air pollution growing also for decades, since many years. Why have we suddenly seen in the last 5 or 6 years the situation becoming so dire, and I would say over the last 2 and 3 years, worse and worse every year?
Okay, so I think 2 aspects. One is that when this air pollution debate started in India, it always focused on city level approach. We never realized that there is a lot of stuff which can come from outside of cities to the cities. And as the research progressed, what we realized that say like in case of Delhi, 40% of pollution in Delhi is contributed by its own sources, while 60% is actually coming from outside, which includes industries, biomass burning happening in rural kitchens, other dust related activities, and agricultural burning, which happens in these 15-20 days when you can detect the fires through satellite. So I think this is one reason that it was never felt before, although it was happening. The second thing is that in the state of Punjab, we all know how the groundwater bill moved the harvesting season by a month, which sort of forced the farmers to get rid of this residue in the period of just 15-20 days, because they have to sow the next crop in time. And that's probably the second reason that slowly the season shifted, and you are now seeing the concentrations in very high numbers, because as you move towards winters, as you move the harvesting season towards winters, the meteorology gets adverse and leads to formation of much higher concentrations of pollutants.
Bharti Chaturvedi, do you think this is because largely of stubble burning as it's being believed, or is it also because in cities over time there has been an unchecked increase in vehicles and thus vehicular pollution? What part does vehicular pollution play in all of this?
You're absolutely right. You're spot on. Vehicular pollution is really huge. And in fact, you know, we talk of stubble burning, but that's just about 6 weeks. We have 48 other weeks in the year, and vehicular pollution is one of the #1 polluters across urban India. And within that, two-wheelers are really important. And one of the failures in our urban governance has really been that we haven't been able to put a really good, reliable, safe, affordable bus service in place across our cities. I mean, even in Delhi, our capital, in 5 years, we've not even managed those 10,000 buses which would, you know, fill our deficit, fill the gap. So it's not surprising that we haven't brought the base pollution down. If our base pollution was down and lower, then we would actually be able to, you know, even the stubble burning and the pollution there wouldn't see these kinds of AQIs that we've been seeing in the last few days here. So I think that is the critical way to go ahead, to reduce two-wheelers, to reduce diesel vehicles, to reduce private transport, and bring everyone back
Yes.
into buses, make them desirable to travel on.
Well, that is, in fact, I would say a big lacuna amongst most Indian cities, save maybe a couple of notable exceptions where private transport or public transport has not taken off as much as it should, though Delhi has made up to some extent with the metro. The question is, right now, the focus is all on stubble burning. In fact, the top court also has come down with strict directions, including you know, fines for farmers who now indulge in stubble burning. Avik Saha, can you explain to us very simply first, because I think less people know this than should, why do farmers have to burn their stubble? Is there no other way? And what will they do now?
I'm not liking the direction the debate is taking, because finally you will not find a solution in city versus village equations. Farmers are burning stubble for a number of reasons which are primarily economic and livelihood related. They are not doing it to spite the city. Remember, they live in the villages where the stubble is being burned, so they must be equally affected by the pollution. Now the problem is one of political and administrative will.
Mr. Saha, before you continue, and please do continue in detail, but I must object. Mr. Saha, before you continue, and do continue in detail, but you must allow me to object to what I think is a bit of an accusation that we're saying, oh, these farmers are the ones polluting the cities. Not at all. It is a lack of a solution which needs to be found, and which is why I brought out the point about vehicular pollution as well. So there's no finger pointing. The farmers are not different from us. They're our own brethren. They're our own countrymen. So with that very clear, please do continue.
Thank you for that vote of confidence. Now the point is, I for one would not like farmers to burn stubble. The reasons are many, which are primarily livelihood and economic oriented. The solution lies, if you do this program on the pollution of, let's say, Delhi, once a month for 30 minutes, that's just 30 minutes of programming once in 30 days. If you take up pollution as an issue, the programs, the plans will get implemented, because every month you can ask the concerned government, the concerned authorities, what they have been doing. In 2017, the Supreme Court comes up with a comprehensive action plan, the CAP. It has a slew of excellent suggestions. The only thing that remains in that is comprehensive and plan. The action is gone. If you track the action every month, we won't be having this debate next year. I can assure you of that. Stubble burning can be stopped. There are many ways suggested, including the happy cedar. The problem is, again, there is a lack of political will. There's a cost to it, which is nothing more than 100 rupees a quintal for rice, or let's say 200 rupees a quintal. That's 2 rupees a quintal, and the government hasn't taken 1 inch forward with this. So finally, we the citizens are suffering because our elected governments are not acting, our public administration is not acting, And we can be radical and we can say that let's let the farmers stop stubble burning, let vehicular traffic come down. All of that will help, but will help partially. Finally, there is a clean path and a well laid out plan in front of us, which nobody wants to implement. 5,000 buses were supposed to be introduced in Delhi in 2017. Have 50 buses been introduced? I live in Delhi. I've got a sore throat. I'm really having trouble. I can understand what the complaint is about, what the city is suffering under. But, you can only ask your government and your public officials for explanations. You can ask them about the plan that the highest court of this land has produced and given you to act upon. The Supreme Court has said that public administration in the stubble burning districts will be pulled up. Why isn't the Supreme Court asking the Delhi government, where are those 5,000 buses? So it comes to a question of will, it comes to a question of governance,
they pulled up the Delhi government
and it
as well
comes
for
to a
not
question of the media tracking this story regularly.
Okay, Bharti wants to come in. Yes, Bharti. Yes, Bharti.
Yeah, thanks. So I actually would take the stubble in a I'd look at it a little differently. And my perspective really builds up from talking to farmers for the last year and a half in Punjab and visiting those fields and so on. And the way I see it is fundamentally we're just putting Band-Aid on cancer. What we really need right now is to overhaul what is planted. And you have to move away from that economy of rice, because then you have to scrap the Punjab Preservation of Subsoil Water Act, which is what both the Punjab and later the Haryana government brought in, because they said, hey, rice is a water guzzling crop. So, and the water tables are falling. So please only plant it to coincide with the rains so that you don't, drink up the rain, the groundwater. And as a result, there was very little time left between the winter sowing and the harvesting of the rice. And that really gave a huge push to burn the stubble. So, but the point is that Punjab and Haryana and actually all of India, we're going into a huge climate change crisis. And water's anyway collapsing in the ground tables. So we really have to move away from rice. There are all kinds of crops. I for one, have echoed what some of the farmers have told me, which is that we want to see some millets, but there could be a whole range of crops. I'm saying find a crop suitable for a place like Punjab, little bit arid, not so much water.
Okay, before we come,
because I know
Avik
also
wants
link
to
it with
respond.
markets until you get
before we come to the feasibility of now. Yes, Bharti, just a minute.
Please.
Just a minute. Before we come to the feasibility of asking farmers now to start changing the kind of crops they grow, and I know Avik wants to come in on it, I want to come to Mr. Sukhmeet Singh, who's the co-founder of A2P Energy Solutions, which has found some kind of a solution to the whole stubble burning problem. Sukhmeet, first, can you take us through what these solutions are that you've proposed to make this waste commercially viable and how it works?
So there are two things which I heard. One was that about changing the crop cycle, and second was policy implementation, where putting out fines and be harsh to the farmers. So both these areas, let's suppose you tomorrow start putting fines to the farmers. If you see, on an average, farmer will have maybe 10 acres of land, and on that 10 acres of land there will be 20 tons on an average straw which will be produced. Now for a farmer, that particular straw, if he picks it out, there is no place to store. It is the livelihood problem of the farmer that there is no place, there is no use for the straw. Second thing is, let's suppose even if you change the cropping cycle, correct? So let's suppose if you go to sugarcane or maize or any other crop, there has to be the stubble which will be there in every other crop, that also has to be managed. When we started this particular company, A2P Energy, Agri to Power, the idea was clear that it has to work on an economic incentive for the farmer. If we are all living in cities, if we every decision is based on an economic incentive, why don't farmers also, should be taking those particular calls? Now, when we started, we said that, the problem is of stubble. We need to pay farmers for the straw from the day one, and then only they will like to work with us, right? So the idea was very clear. Second step was that, once we collected, we promoted few farmer entrepreneurs, we started collecting stubble in baled forms. Now the idea was then, what do you do with this particular stubble? We started exploring different options. The first option was that if it is being burned on the fields, it has some energy, some calorific value. Why don't we start converting that into some kind of fuel? The idea was very clear. We did one farmer meeting with approximately 80 to 100 farmers. We told them not to burn. We will come and collect the straw. We will actually promote farmer entrepreneurs who can help us collect the straw. You will not imagine each farmer called us and said that, please take our straw. We don't want to burn it. So the idea is very clear. Farmer is not doing it on its own. Now, once we started exploring the technology to process the straw, there is technology available in the developed nations, be it Germany, Sweden. So where every kind of crop residue can be converted into different products. We started working on converting the straw into fuel. We have been very successful. We started working with good brand names. This can actually be one of the solutions. And if we study from an economic point of view, this has to be distributed processing of the straw. We process now straw. We process close to 4,000 tons. We take at least 3 to 4 villages. We take all the straw and convert that.
But no, Sukhmeet, I'm sorry to interrupt you there. This sounds like a wonderful idea. But how big is the scale right now? Because people are already in some weird kind of dystopian future right now in large parts of Delhi, Gurgaon, NCR, and across swaths of northern India. It's like a bad future is already here. So this idea sounds great, but where is it on scale? How many farmers and how many sort of kilograms of stubble are you able to process, and what do you need to do to scale this up?
Okay, so I'll tell you, I am very sad in terms of what discussions, the central government is having right now. It is all towards how do we stop farmers, how do we stop farmers from this burning. There were 1,000 farmer suicides in last 2 years. If you push it more, it will be 2,000 farmer suicides. Now, if you don't pay farmers for this stubble, you are actually pushing a person who is giving you grains, you are pushing him to doing suicide. So the idea is very clear. Unless you start doing this at village scale level, so our one plant covers 3 villages. So if we put one plant in 3 villages, all the stubble will it soak up, produce fuel, and this fuel replaces the harmful pet coke, which produces a lot of sulfur. Or let's suppose conventional fuel, which like wood, coal, it comes all the way from Jharkhand to Punjab, and we are able to replace the same fuel with our fuel produced from rice straw. Now the idea is that the government has to come and say that, okay, we will promote such kind of initiatives in each district. Unless you put this kind of processing plants in each district, you will not be able to control the scale. And you can't think of a solution right now. You are at the fag end of the burning season and say that, suddenly farmers should stop this. It has to actually, for the next year, the planning has to do right now. But idea is that let's suppose you put, 100 of such plants, what we are putting, right? But who will fund that amount of capital? Right. Whereas, VCs or angel investments, they don't come into these kind of funding initiatives. I think the central government has to come up with the initiative, say that, okay, we will fund these kind of entrepreneurs.
The governments have to come in, and if there is a clear commercial plan, absolutely, Sukhmeet, the governments have to come in, and if there's a clear commercial plan which is viable, which works either for what Sukhmeet Singh is doing or for what others are also doing, I think it's time that we start looking at solutions. Avik, do you agree? Because it's the same blame game, and what you're saying is absolutely right. Delhi Sarkar didn't get as many buses as it should have. The central government should have got Punjab and Haryana, governments to sit down and figure out a solution by now. They have not done it so far. But can we start looking at solutions? Do you think that looking at options to stubble burning should be the priority in terms of finding solutions?
Oh yes, absolutely. But as I had suggested earlier, we are a democracy. We act on public requirements and public pressure. So I had suggested that you to keep doing this show once a month. What's happening is, a season comes when all of us get together, talk about pollution in Delhi, find a favorite whipping horse, and we finish, in about 7 days' time, this problem will be over and everything will be back to, business as usual. What I'm suggesting is
as the
that what
winds
Sukhbir
change.
has suggested is scalable. I don't think we should ask Sukhbir that, are you doing enough? He can't, he won't. He's given us an idea. If the government doesn't pick up this idea, then the government doesn't care for the citizens who voted to power. Then the government is killing its own citizens. I think at that level of anger, anxiety, and pressure, we need to deal with the pollution situation. It's not something that we can just let it pass in 2 weeks. Come Diwali, everybody will be upset. No, this is 365 days a year,
absolutely.
continuous effort, and people like Sukhbir come up with ideas. The government creates the facilitating environment. The climate of change needs to be there.
Yes. Now, Sumit Sharma, let me end this conversation, with your views on focusing on solutions. And I get Avik's point that we should not forget when the winds change. Avik has said the media should keep it up, and definitely the media should, but so should the people who live in these places that get plagued year on year. Because you know that in another year, this whole season is coming back unless people start leaving en masse from these areas to stay safe. So what kind of now an oversight do you hope to happen? Are you more optimistic now that the Supreme Court has entered the fray once again?
See, we will have to remain optimistic in this kind of, which looks like a hopeless situation. But I think that what we have sort of, concluded out of the discussions in this forum, that we have to deal the sources which are polluting the city year round. We just cannot focus on one sector, whether it's agricultural burning, transport, or industries. Let me throw some statistics which came out of our study, which showed that transport, if you talk about the average of the whole winters, transport contributes to 28% of Delhi's pollution. Industries, there are not many industries which are using polluting fuel in Delhi, but the moment you go out in NCR, there are so many industries, so many types of industries which are contributing to the problem, and that amounts to about 30%. 15% is coming from biomass burning, which includes both agricultural residues and residential cooking, which happens with biomass in the rest of the NCR. And then you have rest of the smaller sources, refuse burning, construction, road dust contributing to significant quantities. Now this is an average share of sources in winters. The moment you get into this 15 days, these 15 days when agricultural burning at its peak, then the share of agricultural burning goes up to 30-40%, and we start making all kinds of noise about it. So the problem is twofold. One is to reduce this peak of pollution which we are dealing for last 2 weeks, but more importantly, deal the pollution all around the year and probably work harder during summers so that this problem does not go so big in winters.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've focused on what experts think in this show. We've not indulged in the blame game, but at the end of the day, the people who live in these areas and suffer this year on year, have to make your elected leaders responsible for pollution as well. You have to make it an election issue. You have to make it a political issue to really get them to sit up and take notice. It can't be business as usual. On that note, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the India Development Debate this evening. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Good evening.